And greetings YouTube gamers, welcome to a special episode of Retro Raider. My name is Johnny Retro and welcome to the channel. Now we got a very special anniversary today. The iconic Mortal Kombat is celebrating 25 years of existence. And I have a lot to talk about Mortal Kombat because, this game is one that brings me a lot of memories and it's actually one of my favorite fighting game franchises of all time. Now the first time that I've seen Mortal Kombat was actually on the arcade's Mortal Kombat 2. And I don't know how it was in the rest of the world, but at least here in Portugal, you had to be 16 years old in order to play on the arcades. Unless you went with, your parents, I guess, but, my parents were not very much into video games. There I was, I think that I was like 6 or 7 years old, and I was always trying to sneak behind, the security guard, whatever, the guy that was in charge of the arcades. And most of the time, I just had, a small chance to see other people playing the game on the arcade. But a friend of mine got one, and I think that it was his older brother, who got Mortal Kombat 3 for the Sega Mega Drive. So this one right here was the first time that I've played Mortal Kombat on the home console. And every time that I went to his place, I wanted to play Mortal Kombat. Then, a little bit after that, I got my PlayStation 1. And growing up with the PlayStation 1, playing the first games released for the platform, I grew up with, Tomb Raider, Tekken, Crash Bandicoot, stuff like that. And I must say that, I had, amazing parents during the years, And when I was a kid, my parents never, forbidden me to do, a lot of the things that I wanted to do. I mean, within reason, of course. But yeah, my parents were always, very open-minded. And actually, when I got into heavy metal, because, I love heavy metal. And I think that the first time that I've seen a real heavy metal show, I was probably 14 years old. And I went alone with my friends and we got to see Cradle of Filth. But Mortal Kombat, when it comes to Mortal Kombat, it was probably one of the very few times that my parents forbidden me to do something that I really wanted to do, and I wasn't supposed, because it was something that it was not very appropriate for my age. And that was when I first got my first copy of a Mortal Kombat game. That game was Mortal Kombat Trilogy for the PS1. So at the time, of course, I was never into adult games, and to be honest with you, I think that adult games was not a real thing yet, back in the day. But my parents allowed me to get this without knowing what it was. And when I got back home, and they saw me playing the game, with all the blood, the violence and stuff like that, even the environment of the game, they were not very happy with it. In fact, my mother says that, I got nightmares with the game, if you can believe that. So my parents made me trade the game back in the store. And I got this copy, a couple of years later, and it's all beaten up, the front is broken, but, this is a reminder for me of the pain that I had to go through to play Mortal Kombat. So back into the history of Mortal Kombat. Although the game was released in '92 for the arcades, it was not until '93 that it was released for the home consoles. And in '93 you had 4 ports of the original game. You got this one for the Mega Drive and the Genesis, you got one for the Super Nintendo, Game Boy and Game Gear. Now of course that the Game Boy and the Game Gear versions are, very poor, of course. I mean, they were meant to handheld consoles. But when it comes to the home consoles, I honestly prefer the Mega Drive one rather than the Super Nintendo one. Because although the Super Nintendo has, better music and better graphics, this one captivates me, the spirit of Mortal Kombat. Because due to the, family-friendly policies of Nintendo, you didn't got the blood and some of the fatalities on the Super Nintendo version. But on this one, through a cheat code, you can get all of that. See right here? Yeah. Stay safe, kids. There was also a port of the original game in 1994 for the Master System, exclusively to Europe. And I don't know if that game is rare or not, but, truth is that I never saw a copy of it. A very controversial game back in the day indeed, and, it still amazes me. Because when I get to play this game today, and I've actually shown this game, to, younger cousins and my nephew. And of course that they don't think that the game is violent. But at the time, I think, at least for me, it was very realistic. And probably because, the sprites of the game, the animations and the characters were actually real actors. So that probably gave it, a more in-depth realism to the whole thing. But of course that you don't play Mortal Kombat just because of the violence. I mean, I think that what makes this game special and what makes this game stand out from other fighting video game franchises is the story. Usually in fighting games, you don't need a very big, detailed story in order to make a good fighting game. But the guys from Midway, they've put so much inspiration and a background to the story of the game. I mean, the lore of Mortal Kombat is so detailed. I mean, each realm, the background of each character. I mean, there is a purpose behind all of that, There is a purpose for the conflict of the game. There is a purpose why each character went into the tournament. Earthrealm and Outworld. It's a very, very detailed story indeed. Speaking of characters, probably my favorite character is Sub-Zero. Definitely Sub-Zero. Sub-Zero is my all-time favorite Mortal Kombat character. Actually, one of the games that I've been looking for my PS1 collection is Sub-Zero Mythologies. It's a game that focuses on the story of Sub-Zero and, with one of the best main villains also, Quan Chi. But that's a topic for another video, and it's definitely a game that I need to have in my collection. Another thing that brings me a lot of nostalgia about Mortal Kombat is the music. See, this game received, a lot of publicity, and mainly because it was, an extreme game, a violent game. But Midway, they really promoted the game, in a superb way. They got a comic book of the game, that it was released when the game was released also, and I think that the comic book, tells a little bit about the story of the tournament. And I could be wrong, but I think that you could only get the magazine through mail order, and it was exclusive for North America. So those are probably a little bit hard to find. But the thing that brings me, a lot of nostalgia is the music. There was an official CD of Mortal Kombat made by the Immortals. And the music not only serves the game in a very good way, but it was, that type of techno music that, for me, it defined the 90s. And I bet that a lot of you recognize this. Definitely my favorite track on the album. And please let me know in the comment section below what do you guys think about me making a music cover of that song. I'm gonna make it. Yeah, I'm gonna do it. Even the movies, a lot of people don't like the Mortal Kombat movies. I love them. Now, the franchise kind of lost me a little bit, since the PS3 era. The games are still okay, but, when I think about Mortal Kombat, I definitely think about the old school ones. So yeah, guys, it's time to wrap up this video, so please let me know in the comment section below. What do you think about Mortal Kombat? Did you play it back in the day? Do you still play it now? Leave your thoughts in the comment section below. Happy birthday, Mortal Kombat. And as always, guys, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to put a like on this video, please subscribe to the channel, and take care of yourselves, take care of the gaming community, and game a lot.